So I was watching this video the other night about the social contract when you're playing a tabletop RPG. I've heard a lot of people talk about social contracts, and a lot of it seems to be unwritten rules, which is obviously BS because you've got no contract. If you haven't said anything, if you haven't shook hands, if you haven't written anything down, you've got no contract at all. All you've got is expectation of behaviour. But on the Sean Driscoll channel here, he's actually got a list of expected behaviours, I suppose. So I thought it might be interesting just to go through and offer my opinions and thoughts about them. So you can see the first one laid out here. HDSL/cable or better internet connections. Obviously this is for online play. I have no idea what HDSL means. Cable, well, pretty much everything is on cable, I suppose, unless you're connecting with your mobile phone. But I guess what he's aiming at here is having a reasonable and decent connection. That's fair enough, I suppose. But having said that, when I've played a lot of my online games, I'm playing across international borders. I've had people coming in from Eastern Europe, and some of their connections are pretty damn dire. In which case, I often tell them, turn off the video. Let's just go to audio for you, because it's lesser bandwidth, and it means the audio quality usually picks up a bit. But he's got here that he wants them with camera and microphone. Now, I can understand that. You want to be able to see how people are reacting. You don't want to be talking to an empty stage as such. But that's not a requirement when I'm playing or when I'm refereeing. Obviously they do need a microphone, and the better it is, I'll tell them if it's terrible and awful, but I wouldn't, normally speaking, I wouldn't kick anybody out of the game. I'm just grateful to have somebody willing to play with me. Okay, his next one here. No cameras, phones, phone apps, touchpads, TVs or PDAs, no tablets, no slates, so no mobile handheld devices. Now, I think that's fair enough, but I've never had it where that became a problem. I've had people where their phone rang and they had to mute, but it's never been a case of... I've never played with anybody who was so distracted by their device. I suspect that could be a problem in face-to-face games, but I've never had that online. Headphones are a must to prevent echo. Again, I agree. I think that's a pretty good rule. I don't believe I've ever had a problem with that, though. That's probably just luck on my part. So, hang on, let's just move it up because there's a few more down below. Oh, come on, refresh the picture. There we go. So, no chirping smoke detectors. Replace the damn batteries. That can be so annoying. So he's basically getting at the fact he doesn't want your background noise to distract everyone from playing. You know, that could be dogs barking, I suppose. Doorbell going, that sort of thing. But again, that's never really been a problem for me. I've played with people who've had bad audio. Actually, I've played with people who can barely speak English. But it's usually worked, and it's been worth the effort. But yeah, chirping smoke detectors, definitely get that the hell out of here. No food, but drinks are okay. Now, I definitely don't agree with that. I'm much more we're sitting down, we're having a social experience, so that includes food and drink. If somebody's unwrapping a lot of individually wrapped crinkly plastic sweets, then if that's coming down the microphone, then they're just being rude. And I would point that out. I'd say, can you stop eating them, or go unwrap them with the microphone muted and just eat them afterwards. But at the same time, I don't want people smacking their mouth and, you know, down the microphone. No, that's no fun for anyone. So it's a reasonable rule, but not one I would enforce. In fact, I think I'd be hard pushed to enforce anything. So no phone use, texting, web browsing during the game. Again, it's a pretty good rule, but not one I've had to enforce. web browsing can be useful if you want to look something up, but at the same time, it's distracting from the gameplay. Let me give you an example. I was playing classic Traveller campaign, and one of the players had an ACR, and I don't know where he got this idea from, but he had the idea that he got, it's been a couple of years now, so I'm trying to remember, he got an extra roll or a bonus to hit or extra damage with that rifle that nobody else was getting with the standard rules. I didn't know enough from memory to say he was wrong. I felt he was wrong, but I didn't say he was wrong. I just went, oh, okay, and we rolled with it. We actually just let him carry on doing that throughout the rest of the campaign as well. The intent, or the reason behind my behaviour, was that I was going to look up the rules after that session. So the next game, I'd have the rules down pat. I'd be able to correct the situation. I wouldn't retcon anything, but I would, we'd do it correctly going forwards. I just never got round to checking or looking it up. And that's a bit like web browsing. It's distracting from the game, from the story, from the plan, from the intent of what you want to get out of that session. So, again, I can see it, but I think it would well be worth specifying that rule to people. We're going to play a story, we're going to get through this game, this adventure, this module, and we're not going to get distracted, unless you really have to. So, no chat room use or private messaging in the Hangout. Okay, so you could be messaging the other players. Again, that would be distracting. What if you were messaging the referee? He's going to stop doing his business to read your message, have to process it. Again, that would be bad for the game. So that's a pretty good rule. Pretty good. No out-of-character speaking during the game session. That's pretty harsh. That's pretty harsh. Sometimes you just need to ask questions. You need to chat backwards and forwards with the other players. Actually, I was listening to, this is going back a couple of years, but I was listening to an actual play of Heroic Cthulhu. And the rule there was that if you, the player, say it, your character says it. And that's basically what's going on here, which led to some interesting scenarios, such as the PCs were standing in the lobby of a museum. They wanted to get in and look through the secret books and artifacts there. And the guy running the museum was saying, no, you can't come in. So the players started discussing, should we knock him on the head? Why don't I stab him? I could just shoot him. And of course, because the referee had this rule, their characters were all saying this in front of that curator of the museum, and he ended up running for his life. So it was pretty funny. I think that could be a good rule as well. I'm just thinking it through, though. I think it would be pretty hard to enforce with the sort of chat around the table that I like. But again, chat around the table can be so tiresome. I remember days where, this is back when playing in person, but people would arrive and it'd be an hour and a half before the game started because everyone was just chatting and catching up. And when I play online games, I usually do it in 2-hour segments, so we haven't got time for that sort of stuff. Players don't ask the GM questions. I don't know what that means. To character? Does he mean players as opposed to characters? I'm guessing that you don't want to say, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do the other? Can I see this? He wants them to be more cinematic about the approach, as in make assumptions and move the story, the action forwards by saying exactly what they're going to do. Rather than saying, can I jump up to that 10-foot ledge? They say, I'm going to jump up to a 10-foot ledge. It's interesting. I've played another game, 316 Carnage Amongst the Stars, and the mechanics within that game are so simplistic that you have to tell a story with everything you do. And again, there's no need to ask in that case, because you know that you're going to be making a die roll to see whether you can do it or not. So you just narrate what you're doing, roll the die, get the result, and you tell everybody what happened. So again, I think this is a good guideline. I don't know if I would have it as a rule. Nothing so strong as a contract. Okay, each player, including the GM, narrates what their character is doing. So that means the GM doesn't narrate what your character's doing, and you don't narrate what the NPCs, the referee controls, are doing. That's a pretty good rule. Pretty good rule. It's going to be hard for some referees. I think I would have trouble doing that. I'd have to keep thinking it through. Like, if they say they're climbing a rope and I'll say, okay, you're climbing the rope and I've just narrated what the character's doing. So I think I'd have to be careful with that. I think it's a very good principle, though, for good interactive play, good storytelling, I should say. The players narrate their successes while the GM narrates their failures. That's a good rule. So they're hacking a computer. They make the roll, they succeed. The player tells me as the referee what they get out of it. But that's a bit difficult unless they know what they're going in there for or what information they're going to find. For instance, say they're hacking a computer to find out some dirt on somebody. Can they tell me what the dirt is, or will I, as the referee, have to tell them what the dirt is? They could tell me that they get the dirt, and I could explain what the dirt is. Again, good principle, good principle. And obviously, GM narrates the failures. That's pretty standard role-playing for everybody. All talking, as well as asking questions, is done in character. PCs speak to other PCs and NPCs, and NPCs speak to PCs to relay the answer to questions. So I guess this feeds back into players don't ask the GM questions. The characters are asking, like, can I reach that? Can I see behind that tree? Am I taller than this character? They can just look and see. Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of an empowerment thing for the players. It's a good rule. It's a good rule. I like it. Yeah. No initiative, no combat rounds. Combat is close to real time as possible, and action is cinematic in style. Characters are allowed to move at the speed of their player's narration. Wow. Okay, so that's quite a bunch there. No initiative. Everybody's pretty used to initiative. You go, I go. If you're having an interactive session where everybody's participating, they're not browsing the internet, they're not using their tablet, you could do this, and I think it could work. No initiative. So who goes first? That's interesting. If the good guys and the bad guys are about to all draw their weapons, how do you decide who goes first? As a referee, you could just decide and say, players are quicker, they're better, more practiced, they can draw their guns quicker, and you could just take it from there. All the players will be jumping in with what they're doing and where they're going. There might be a lot of talking over each other, which could be problematic. And that's why you kind of have the initiative, isn't it? Is the I go, you go idea. But I kind of like this. And then the next step here is no narration means no action taken by that player character. They're sitting or standing there. So if everybody's taking part in this action scene and just saying what their character's doing, and somebody says nothing, then they're just standing there and watching. They're not helping. They're not sucking up bullets or anything. That's interesting. I haven't done that. I've certainly explicitly said who gets to go first. I've rolled initiative, I've done that, but I've never gone no initiative. I find that kind of interesting. It might be interesting to negotiate that. And I wonder how no combat rounds actually plays out. Players just going to want to keep shoot. But I suppose as they take a shot, as a referee or another player, you say, I take a shot. And so everybody starts pouring in the fire. I think that could work really well. I think I'm going to have to sit down and have a little thinky about that one, though. Okay, next one up. When a character dies, the player leaves the hangout and the game until they've created a new character to return to the game with. Wow, that's pretty harsh. What's the purpose in that? Is that to stop them asking questions? I don't think you should kick them out. That seems like a bad idea. I think you could say to them, right, your character's dead, mute yourself. Just mute yourself until you've got another character to go. I don't like kicking them out because you could lose the connection or anything from a technical standpoint. Sitting around a table, I could see somebody rolling a lot of dice would be invasive, but certainly not online. They could shut off their camera or mute themselves. They don't have to be actively taking part. But I don't see why you couldn't let them listen, as long as you've given them the instructions to be mute. Players must have their character sheets with them. I think that's perfectly reasonable. As a referee, I don't want to keep character sheets, especially if you're playing online. Might have a copy of them, I suppose, but again, that is asking your players to take some responsibility for the enjoyment, for the play, isn't it? They need to turn up with their kit. There's no point going to football if you haven't got your shorts and your boots, and it's just like that, isn't it? I think that's pretty reasonable, but I wouldn't stop someone playing just because they didn't have their character sheet. Especially if it's after the first session, I'd expect them to have an idea of what skills they've got, or to carry on playing without skills. You know, they'll just have to try and make the rolls without having any specific skill, or we could estimate the skills. I'd rather the gameplay with that person carried on than not let them play. And related to this, I think in related to this, I hate session 0. I want everyone to come to that first session, especially, I run a lot of one-shots. I want people there with a character ready. The whole idea of a session 0 just grinds my gears. I want to sit down and start playing, start telling the story, and I can't do that if everybody's rolling their characters. Now, leading on from that, if I'm doing a classic Traveller one-shot, then there's a very quick way that you can have a character. You roll 2d6. You allocate that to your stats, or roll it in order, however you prefer. As a referee, I don't care. Select what service you're going into. Are you going into Scouts? Are you going into the Navy? Whatever. Look at the list of skills. Pick 4 or 4 levels of skills. So you could put all 4 into one skill if you want. Crazy. Or 4 separate skills at level 1. And just write them down. That's it. Your character's ready to go. You might even want to give it a name. Okay, let's have a look at my notes here. What else did I have to say? Diddly pom. Okay, social contract. Yeah, so basically, before I saw this list, my own personal social contract was, 1, you got to turn up. Unless it's agreed beforehand that you're going to not be there, like every other session or every third session, then you need to turn up. If we're doing it weekly, then turn up. Make arrangements in your life so that you can turn up. It's like playing a football game. You know, if half the team doesn't turn up, you don't have a game. So, number 1, just bloody well turn up. Number 2, don't be a douchebag. And that covers a lot of things. Constantly picking on and attacking other player characters. It's one of my personal bugbears. The thief in the party who keeps pickpocketing other player characters just drives me batty. It's insane. It's creating angst within the party that nobody needs. And I really wish all players would stop doing that. You just agree that you're on the same team and act like that. I think that's about it. Don't be a douche covers quite a lot. I think there's a lot in this social contract that we've got on the screen here. I think a lot of it is over prescriptive, but the principle behind them all is pretty damn sound. So I think sharing this with your players would be a good idea to give them an idea of the expectations that you have, but I would be fairly malleable if I was doing this. Here's what I want. Do everything in that you can, otherwise you're probably a douche. There you go.